There was a time when the name Bridget Fonda was everywhere, from single white female, which shocked audiences with its chilling tale of pathological obsession, to Quentin Tarantino's Jackie Brown, where she transformed into a reckless, rebellious soul. Born into a legendary Hollywood dynasty, it seemed inevitable that Bridget would carry the Fonda legacy into another dazzling chapter. Yet, just as the spotlight reached its peak, she vanished from Hollywood in the early 2000s, without a farewell, leaving behind a void no one could quite explain. 2 decades later, in 2022, Bridget Fonda stunned the public when she reappeared on the streets of Los Angeles, her appearance so dramatically altered that she was almost unrecognizable. In 2025, she once again stirred headlines with another startling physical transformation. Stranger still, her return coincided with the very moment her husband, composer Danny Elfman, was facing personal scandal. And through it all, Bridget Fonda chose complete silence. What truly happened during those long years of seclusion? Was it simply a pursuit of peace, or are there secrets that have never been revealed? To understand her later disappearance, one must trace back to her childhood, where invisible pressures had already begun to take root from the very moment Bridget first cried into the world. Bridget Jane Fonda was born on January 27, 1964, in Los Angeles, the very heart of Hollywood. She was never destined to be just an ordinary child. From birth, the brilliance of the Fonda dynasty loomed over her like an immense shadow. Her grandfather, Henry Fonda, a screen legend immortalized in 12 Angry Men and On Golden Pond, the latter bringing him an Oscar late in life. Her aunt, Jane Fonda, twice an Academy Award winner, a global star, and a polarizing political activist. Her father, Peter Fonda, the countercultural face of Easy Rider, a film that defined an entire generation of late 1960s rebellion. In such a dazzling family, Bridget could never escape sky-high expectations. Peter Fonda once bluntly remarked that for his daughter to succeed, she would have to climb Mount Everest 4 times, once for each family legend and once for herself. That half-joking, half-serious statement hung over her like a suspended sentence, a constant reminder that the name Fonda was both a launch pad and a burden. Yet behind the glamour lay an unsettled childhood. In 1974, when Bridget was just 10, her parents divorced. From then on, her childhood split in 2. One half in Coldwater Canyon, Hollywood, where the glow of fame seeped through every window, the other in Montana, where nature offered a serenity that felt like another world. This contrast left her teetering between 2 poles, drawn toward the spotlight, yet yearning to escape it for simplicity and safety. Even her name, Bridget, carried a fateful echo. Peter named her after Bridget Hayward, daughter of actress Margaret Sullivan, who had died tragically at the age of 21. What seemed like a beautiful name, in fact, tied Bridget Fonda to a legacy of loss, an unspoken warning from the start of her life. Growing up, Bridget attended the prestigious Westlake School for Girls in Los Angeles, later spending time at Harvard to study art history, immersed in Renaissance and modernist painting. She went on to Tisch School of the Arts and the Lee Strasberg Institute, graduating in 1986. Yet despite her thorough preparation, Bridget admitted that deep inside, she was haunted by a single question. Am I good enough? Do I truly deserve the name Fonda? From her earliest years, Bridget's life was already a paradox, born into light, yet forever under the shadow of a name too great to escape. And it was this very paradox that shaped the course of her career to come. Bridget Fonda's path into cinema began almost as a fleeting memory. In 1969, at just 4 years old, she appeared in Easy Rider, the film co-written and headlined by her father, Peter Fonda. It was only a brief scene, but symbolic nonetheless. Art had entered her life early, like a destiny she could never escape. By the 1980s, Bridget began carving her own way. She took on small roles in Aria, 1987, and You Can't Hurry Love, 1988. Despite her hard work, Hollywood still looked at her with suspicion. Producers and audiences alike kept asking, is she a real actress or just Peter Fonda's daughter? That question clung to her, even as she admitted to The Guardian, people expected me to be good right away. But I was always afraid I was chosen just because of the name. Her real chance came in 1990, when Francis Ford Coppola was casting The Godfather Part III. Bridget entered the audition nervous, burdened by the constant fear that she was nothing more than a Fonda shadow. But Coppola silenced the doubt. She's more than just a name. I chose her because she has star quality. In the film, Bridget played Grace Hamilton, a role without much screen time, but enough to place her alongside legends like Al Pacino and Diane Keaton. More importantly, it was the first time she felt recognized for her own talent, not her family name. The Godfather Part III didn't instantly make Bridget a star, but it gave her a crucial push. From being a young actress doubted for her abilities, she began to attract the attention of major directors, opening the door to her true breakthrough. If the road ahead was a steep mountain, that film was her first steady step on the slope, signaling a dazzling journey waiting just beyond. Bridget Fonda entered the 1990s like a daredevil. After a string of minor roles, she was unexpectedly summoned by Coppola for The Godfather Part III, 1990. Yet behind the scenes, the experience was far from easy. Bridget admitted that when she walked into the audition room, she trembled, convinced she was only being noticed because of the Fonda name. Then Coppola looked her straight in the eye and declared, "You have more than just a name. I chose you because you have star quality." For the first time in her life, Bridget felt truly validated. Though her role as Grace Hamilton was brief, that single nod opened the door for her to step out of her family's shadow. 2 years later came the explosion of Single White Female, 1992. As Allison Jones, a young woman tormented by her obsessive roommate, Bridget leapt straight into stardom. Made for just $16 million, the film grossed over $80 million, becoming such a cultural phenomenon that the phrase "single white female" entered everyday language to describe a copycat stalker. On set, Bridget had to steel herself to act alongside Jennifer Jason Leigh, whose terrifyingly immersive performance made certain scenes almost unbearable to shoot. By the time the film hit theaters, Hollywood no longer saw Bridget as Peter Fonda's daughter, but as a bona fide box office star. At that very moment, she burned down her own image once more with Point of No Return, 1993, the American remake of La Femme Nikita. Many doubted that a slender actress could carry the role of a hit woman, but Bridget threw herself into martial arts training, weapons practice, and even rehearsed her walk until her body transformed into that of a sensual, yet lethal assassin. Director John Badham later recalled, "Bridget didn't just play a hit woman, she lived like one." The film's moderate success solidified her status, but more importantly, it proved she was willing to shatter the fragile girl mold audiences had cast her in. A fateful turning point arrived in 1997 when Bridget happened to meet Quentin Tarantino on a plane. Mid-flight, he handed her the script for Jackie Brown and said, "I think you're Melanie." No audition, no lengthy negotiation, just one brief conversation that changed everything. Melanie, the lazy, free-spirited, and cunning girlfriend, became one of Bridget's most memorable roles. On screen, the moment Robert De Niro's character coldly shoots her after an argument left audiences shocked and haunted. Critics nodded in agreement. Fonda had dared to take a part most stars would avoid for fear of tarnishing their image. Then came A Simple Plan, 1998, the pinnacle of her career. As Sarah, the wife who begins as gentle but gradually turns cold and ruthless, she transformed a pregnant housewife into the film's most terrifying figure. Without shouting, without violence, only through her gaze and chillingly delivered lines, Bridget sent shivers down viewers' spines. The film scored 90% on Rotten Tomatoes, and many critics hailed it as her finest performance. If A Simple Plan in 1998 was like a soaring mountaintop, just a year later, Bridget Fonda began sliding down a steep slope. Lake Placid, 1999, a horror comedy about a giant crocodile, was expected to restore her box office shine. But when it premiered, the press ruthlessly tore it apart. CNN sneered that the film was not frightening at all, except for Bridget Fonda's awkward acting. The movie underperformed, leaving the first deep scratch on a career that had seemed unstoppable. But the real downfall came in 2001 with Monkey Bone, a bizarre gamble that combined stop-motion animation with live action. Despite its staggering $75 million budget, the film grossed only $7.6 million. It wasn't just a flop, it was a catastrophe. Bridget Fonda's name, once that of an A-list star, suddenly became synonymous with box office disaster. Studios grew wary, and audiences began to lose faith. As her career wavered, a golden opportunity appeared like a lifeline. David E. Kelley offered her the lead role in Ally McBeal, but Bridget turned it down. At the time, television was still seen as a second-tier stage, and stepping away from film felt like a step backward. She could not have known that this decision would inadvertently close the biggest door of her career. The role went to Callista Flockhart, and Ally McBeal quickly became a global cultural phenomenon. The public lamented her choice, but it was Bridget who paid the price for a decision made at the wrong time. From the dazzling heights of Single White Female to the humiliation of Monkey Bone, Bridget Fonda experienced the feeling of soaring to the top only to plummet into the abyss, all within just a few years. It was not only Hollywood's cruelty, but also the turning point that made her start to consider another path, a path that led away from the stage, leaving behind the lights, the triumphs, and the bitterness alike. From the brilliance of Single White Female to the fall with Monkey Bone, Bridget Fonda's career spanned a mere 15 years. Yet those 15 years left behind indelible marks. A star who dared to choose unconventional roles, dared to challenge herself, and dared to step out of the massive shadow of the Fonda dynasty. In the noisy world of Hollywood, where romances often come and go like fleeting roles, Bridget Fonda chose something different, a steady, enduring bond that once seemed strong enough to last a lifetime. In 1986, just as she was finding her footing in the industry, she met Eric Stoltz, the actor who had risen to prominence with Mask and had once been cast in Back to the Future. They met in the circle of young artists in New York, where auditions, small cafes, and late-night conversations about cinema drew them closer together. It was not a headline-grabbing affair, but rather a long journey shared between two artistic souls. They lived together in Los Angeles and New Mexico, raised a dog named Buckethead, and shared years of love intertwined with creative labor. The press often described them as Hollywood's intellectual couple, without flash, without scandal, just two young people struggling to carve out their place in a demanding industry. Their careers sometimes intertwined in uncanny ways. Bridget and Eric appeared together in Singles and Bodies, Rest and Motion. Off-screen, they weren't just co-stars, but partners, offering script notes to each other, dissecting details and sharing the process. Bridget later admitted that it was thanks to Eric that she felt more connected to filmmaking, not just an actress locked away in a trailer, but a collaborator in the full creative journey. Yet, as with any long-term relationship, distance and work slowly became obstacles. Eric traveled frequently for projects, while Bridget grew increasingly busy with her first leading roles. In a 1993 interview, Eric confessed that he wasn't sure if he had the courage to step into marriage. What sounded like a casual remark was, in hindsight, a sign of cracks quietly forming. Still, their love was marked by genuine tenderness. Bridget once recalled their very first date. She had taken Eric to see her childhood home, only to burst into tears when she found it demolished. Instead of being awkward, Eric comforted her, a moment Bridget described as the most romantic of my life. Small gestures, from bouquets of roses on her birthdays to nights spent sharing ideas, made their love story both simple and profound. But Hollywood rarely allows a relationship to stand still. After nearly 8 years together, they parted ways quietly in 1998. No scandal, no noise, just two deeply connected people suddenly choosing separate paths. The breakup was so profound that Eric's father, Jack Stoltz, wrote Bridget a letter, confessing he considered her a daughter of the family. That letter, many believe, was proof that the separation left sorrow not only for the two actors, but for the loved ones around them. Her romance with Eric Stoltz ended, leaving behind a long chapter of sweetness and regret. Perhaps it was this experience that planted in Bridget the longing for a peaceful home, something she would later seek in her marriage to Danny Elfman. After parting with Eric Stoltz, Bridget remained single, throwing herself fully into her career. But just as the spotlight was about to dim, an unexpected twist struck her life. In February 2003, on the rain-soaked curves of the Pacific Coast Highway, Bridget Fonda's Jaguar suddenly skidded out of control, veering off the road and plunging down an embankment. The impact was so violent it fractured 2 of her vertebrae. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department confirmed that Bridget had been alone in the car when it slid off the highway in the heavy rain. She was rushed to St. John's Medical Center in Santa Monica. Her representative, Nancy Seltzer, reassured the press that the actress was fine and in good health, hoping for a quick recovery. Still, the image of a 39-year-old star, once a defining screen icon of the 1990s, lying motionless in a hospital bed, shocked the public. Though she was fortunate to survive, the accident left Bridget with lasting consequences. Physical injuries could heal, but her career was effectively frozen. At the time, she had just been cast in a key role in David E. Kelley's acclaimed series The Practice. That role might have opened a new chapter for her, a brilliant rebirth on television where many actors had found their second act. But in a single moment of lost control, it all vanished. The accident was more than a professional setback. It marked a turning point in Bridget's life. It forced her to step away from Hollywood's relentless cycle, and to begin searching for something else. Not fame, not roles, but a genuine peace beyond the glare of the spotlight. Not everything that came Bridget Fonda's way was misfortune. Around this time, she discovered a different turning point in her life, a love that would lead to marriage. In 2002, at a party in Los Angeles, she reconnected with Danny Elfman, the brilliant composer who had scored A Simple Plan. What began as a casual reunion quickly blossomed into love, sudden, profound, and strong enough to pull Bridget out of Hollywood's chaotic orbit. On November 29, 2003, just 9 months after her car accident, Bridget married Danny in an intimate ceremony in Los Angeles. No extravagance, no spectacle, just close family and friends. The most moving moment came when Peter Fonda, her famous father, but also a man who had left emotional scars on her childhood, took her hand and walked her down the aisle. For many who witnessed it, that gesture was not just part of a wedding ritual, but a symbolic act of reconciliation between father and daughter. 2 years later, in 2005, Bridget gave birth to their son, Oliver Henry Milton Elfman. From that moment, she virtually disappeared from Hollywood, retreating completely to become a full-time mother. It was a decision that shocked the public, but for Bridget, her little family was the most important role she would ever play. As for Danny Elfman, the man she chose as her life partner, he was already a legend in the world of music. From his early days with the band Oingo Boingo in the 1980s, he went on to a brilliant career collaborating with Tim Burton, creating immortal scores such as Batman, Edward Scissorhands, and the iconic theme of The Simpsons, now etched deep into popular culture. If Hollywood had once been Bridget's stage, music was the kingdom where Danny Elfman had inscribed his name into history. Within the vast shadow of that brilliance, Bridget chose to step back, not out of failure, but because she had finally found something that years in front of the camera had never given her: peace. Yet the seemingly tranquil life Bridget Fonda had chosen was once again shaken, this time by storms tied to her husband, Danny Elfman. In 2017, Elfman became embroiled in a highly publicized lawsuit when pianist Nomi Abadi accused him of sexual harassment, alleging instances of nudity and inappropriate behavior during their time working together. The case ended with an $830,000 settlement, but its echo lingered in the public eye. Questions swirled about Danny Elfman's character and whether Bridget Fonda had known of these troubles. But that was not the end. Just as the scandal appeared to fade, in 2023, a new lawsuit surfaced. This time, the accuser was an anonymous woman, Jane Doe XX. According to the filing, the misconduct dated back to 1997, when she was a 21-year-old student at the New York Film Academy, and Elfman was already 47. Jane Doe XX claimed that Elfman exploited their mentor-student relationship, exposing himself in front of her, lying naked beside her while she remained clothed, and engaging in behavior that left her feeling violated. Her testimony sent shockwaves through the industry, not only revealing a darker chapter of Elfman's past previously hidden from the public, but also draping his name in a heavy shadow. The backdrop of these lawsuits only amplified the uproar. Journalists quickly revisited the 1990s, when Elfman was at the peak of his film score career with Batman, Edward Scissorhands, and his legendary collaborations with Tim Burton. It was a time when Hollywood still operated under an unwritten code. Misconduct was often concealed behind studio doors or smoothed over with secret settlements. Producers, directors, and even the press looked away, so long as the artist continued delivering box office success and awards. Against that backdrop, the accusations that Elfman had used his senior status to prey on young aspirants left the public unsettled. The image of a brilliant composer, once hailed by Disney as a living legend, now stood in stark contrast to the darkness of his resurfaced past. It wasn't just a blow to his reputation, it also cast a new light on Bridget Fonda herself. Many began to look at her with a mixture of sympathy and doubt. Had she ended her career because she understood all too well the turmoil that comes with life in the public eye? What intrigued the public even more was the contrast within the Fonda family itself. Jane Fonda, Bridget's famous aunt, had spent her life as a symbol of activism, throwing herself into social and political causes, never staying silent in the face of injustice. Bridget, in stark contrast, chose silence. She never spoke publicly about her husband's scandals, never addressed the questions hurled her way. While Danny Elfman fought the allegations through legal channels, Bridget stood firm in her own choice, to stay out of sight, away from prying eyes, living like a shadow in a world that thrived on noise. In the end, Bridget Fonda did not leave behind an enormous cinematic catalog. Yet with only a handful of roles, she carved her name into the memory of popular culture. Single white female turned the film's title into an everyday phrase, used to describe pathological obsession in friendship or love. In Point of No Return, Hollywood saw, for the first time, a female assassin both fragile and ruthless, opening a new archetype for women in action films. With Jackie Brown, under Quentin Tarantino's direction, Bridget demonstrated her chameleon-like range, transforming a supporting role into one audiences could not look away from. And in a simple plan, she reached the height of her craft, proving that behind her delicate appearance was a rare psychological depth. What makes Bridget Fonda's legacy remarkable is not the number of films, but the boldness of her choices. She never took the safe route. Each role was a challenge, an experiment that could either soar triumphantly or crash bitterly. That very risk-taking made her career a stark reminder of Hollywood's brutality. A few missteps, combined with one unforeseen twist of fate, could erase an entire future. And yet, it is precisely her sudden disappearance that has kept her allure intact. Had Bridget Fonda not left Hollywood, would the cinematic landscape of the early 2000s look different? Might we have seen a star rivaling Nicole Kidman or Uma Thurman? That question will never be answered. But perhaps the void Bridget left behind is the most important part of her legacy. A reminder that the spotlight does not always stay, and sometimes silence itself can become a legacy. After nearly 2 decades of vanishing from Hollywood's map, the name Bridget Fonda lives on only through the occasional paparazzi photo. She no longer appears on red carpets, gives no interviews, and has taken no part in artistic projects of any kind. Instead, she leads a quiet life with her husband, composer Danny Elfman, and their son, Oliver, in their Encino estate in Los Angeles, far removed from the noise of the spotlight. In January 2022, after 12 years of near-total absence, Bridget was unexpectedly photographed on the street. The woman who had once been a beauty icon of the 1990s now appeared heavier, dressed simply, without makeup. Asked about a possible comeback, she smiled softly. "I don't think I'll return. Being a civilian is more comfortable." That brief reply not only extinguished fans' hopes, but also stood as a declaration. She had truly chosen a different life. By 2024, Bridget once again became the subject of speculation when she was spotted without her wedding ring. Rumors of a rift with Danny Elfman spread quickly, fueled by his past scandals. Yet both remained silent, offering no statement, only deepening the public's curiosity. The greatest surprise came in April 2025. After years of seclusion, Bridget Fonda appeared alongside her husband at an event in Los Angeles. She stunned onlookers with an 80-pound weight loss, regaining a slim figure after many years. Walking hand in hand with Danny Elfman, the couple addressed the press briefly. "We are still a family." That image, 2 spouses united after 16 years of marriage, silenced much of the gossip and revealed something else. Bridget Fonda still chooses to remain in the background, a quiet pillar for her family, rather than seeking a return to Hollywood. Bridget Fonda, the star who once moved audiences to tears in Single White Female and A Simple Plan, ultimately chose to step away while the spotlight was still blazing. Her story is not merely that of a career cut short, but proof that sometimes happiness is not found in applause, but in the courage to turn away and protect one's own peace. Do you hope to see Bridget Fonda return to the screen one day, or would you simply wish her serenity in her life away from the cameras? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe to our channel, where every story is not just about the glitter of fame, but also the shadows and the truths behind it.